Hey everyone, and welcome to What Did I Miss? Andor marks the fourth live-action series that Star Wars has produced on Disney+, but is the first to divide fans as much as it seems to have, with many people calling it the best thing that Star Wars has ever produced, while others are saying quite the opposite. Even though I am known for talking about Star Trek on this channel, I consider myself a big fan of Star Wars as well, and have liked most of what I've seen so far. But Andor was a series that I never could quite get behind, which in a way was frustrating because a lot of other people around me seemed to enjoy it. So I asked my friend Nick from the YouTube channel Sci-Finatics to join me and discuss where we thought Andor went wrong and what could be done in the second season to improve it. We're here with Nick from Sci-Finatics once again. How's it going?
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Eric, for having me as always.
Usually we talk about Star Trek, but today I'm going to talk about Star Wars and their most recent series, Andor. Now, Andor is kind of a weird series because it seems to be critically acclaimed, but the fans seem to be kind of split on it. And I think that that's kind of what we think as well. So, Nick, why don't you give us like your overall review of the season as a whole?
Overall, I enjoyed Andor. I think it was an entertaining series. I thought it had interesting characters in it. It certainly added to the Star Wars universe in terms of world building and all that sort of thing. You know, just when you think Star Wars is as big as it can get, it expands even more so. I think there were moments in the series that kind of almost felt like other franchises apart from Star Wars. Like I definitely think the beginning couple of episodes almost felt more Blade Runner than Star Wars when we were getting started on the show and everything. I thought obviously it brought a certainly more adult tone than we've ever had in Star Wars before, which isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just different, which is fine. So overall, yeah, I enjoyed the season of Andor. I did, however, think it being the longest of the Star Wars series that have been on so far. Normally in previous shows like Mandalorian, like Obi-Wan and Book of Boba Fett, there've been about 8 episodes for the whole season. Now, Andor had 12 episodes. But the thing is much like the Obi-Wan series, I think it didn't need 12 episodes. Much like the Obi-Wan series, probably had enough plot to fill, maybe 4 episodes and it went to 6 or whatever. I think Andor could have probably afforded to do a 10-episode first season rather than 12. I think we spent probably too long on moments that we didn't need to spend as long with. We probably spent a little bit longer in the prison than we needed to. I think we spent certainly too much time watching Cyril Khan eat breakfast cereal coated with blue milk while being nagged by his mother. I think that all could have been tightened up. And there's obviously a little bit of stuff with Dedra Miro, all the machinations with her and the other ISB people and everything, sort of the more political aspects, and not to mention Mon Mothma, having breakfast with her daughter, giving her attitude and things like that. It's like all of those moments, although they rounded out the show, I think they just added as a bit of padding. And I think the season as a whole could have been improved by trimming it down to sort of that 8 to 10 episode duration rather than 12 episodes. What are your thoughts on that department, Eric?
No, I agree. I think you could basically split the first season of Andor into 3 parts. It's that first kind of heist that they're on. And then, of course, there's the prison sequences and the prison break. And then, of course, you have the ending sequence where he goes back for the funeral. They could have taken at least one of those out and maybe just like had, 2 of those sections and, kept the other one. There is going to be a second season of Andor. I'm not sure if it's going to be the same amount of episodes, but it is a lot of content. And it's a lot of filler. It almost seems, not a lot of stuff happened, especially for a Star Wars property. They said, there's going to be, you're not going to see Jedi, you're not going to see lightsabers and stuff like that. This is a different part of the Star Wars universe.
Except lightsabers attached to the side of a ship.
Right. Yeah. And there's also a theory about that character that I want to touch on a little bit later too. What really struck me as odd is a lot of people who I watch, who I respect, held the show in very high regard. And I just felt like I was watching a different show.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
The point of the show is to show a different part of the Star Wars universe. But it might just be that I don't find that part interesting.
There's certain ingredients that make up the recipe that is Star Wars. Even though Andor had a lot of those ingredients, I think the times in which we saw them were either spread too far out or weren't quite in there in the quantities we were used to. I certainly think the whole heist when they were stealing the the Imperial payroll. That all was great. Loved all that sort of stuff. There was, I mean, the prison stuff was interesting, and obviously, there's references in terms of that content to sort of George Lucas's foray into filmmaking with the THX 1138 kind of film. Those sort of elements that felt very similar to that. But I think, I mean, in terms of Star Wars at its core has action and adventure, and it's a bit of a swashbuckling adventure. If we had have kept all of those story beats where it did have those ingredients in it with the action and adventure and that sort of rollicking excitement that Star Wars tends to bring us, if we had have shortened the whole season to 8 to 10 episodes, those moments would have been closer together, and therefore I think it probably would have felt a little bit more Star Warsy. I just think because they were so spread out and we had to kind of work through all of those story beats that in terms of their pacing were kind of quite slow to watch through. I think that might have made it feel a bit more Star Warsy.
What Star Wars has always been to me has been about hope. There are elements of hope in this series. Obviously, it's a rebellion that's trying to coalesce, but it's just, it show, like nobody trusts each other. I don't mind ambiguous characters. Like I think Stellan Skarsgård, his character is my favorite of the whole series, but a lot of the characters I thought were fillers. The one character, Vel, who kind of follows Andor, I just couldn't stand her. Like her face has one emotion, she also, I don't know if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, but she was in that series as well. She played the waif when Arya goes to Braavos to learn from the many-faced god.
Oh, right. Yes.
And
okay. Yeah.
And it's just the same thing. She's got one emotion. She's a hammer. Everything's a nail, and like, I just really, every time I just cringed every time she was on screen. And then another character from the heist, I think his name was Arvel. He was the one that Andor ends up shooting. The actor that plays him, Eben Moss, I'm a really big fan of him.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was in that series Girls with Lena Dunham. He was in, he was
Daredevil.
great. The Bear, which is that
oh right,
show where it's set in a kitchen, in Chicago, and he plays a real jerk in that. So he's a fantastic actor, but I can't get what you mean.
I mean, I loved him in Daredevil. He played a character named Microchip in the first season of Daredevil. It was a different.
I'm actually only I'm watching Daredevil at the moment. Actually.
Oh really?
I'm only halfway through. I'm about 2/3 of the way through the first season of Daredevil. So I look forward to seeing him.
It's a great show and he's great in it. But I really thought he was wasted. I also think that Diego Luna as Andor is kind of forgettable. Like I don't, I wasn't a huge fan of Rogue One. I don't find him super compelling. And again, it's the performances that there was from the show Obi-Wan, Moses Ingram as Reva. She got a lot of flack in the press for her performance as Reva. And I'm thinking, like, how are the characters in this show not getting the same critique? Like, there's very severe characters. It doesn't seem very like Star Wars. I mean, we're seeing a lot more Imperial characters, but for me, Stellan Skarsgård, Andy Serkis, Fiona Shaw, like, all those actors, did a great job in their parts when they were there. To me, this is like if Star Trek did a series on the Bajoran Resistance, like the Bajoran Resistance before DS9, and like bled right into like Commander Sisko talking to Kira the first day on the promenade. Probably cool. I don't know if I care about, like, I don't know if that's like enough to keep me interested. Because the overarching story of DS9 is great, just like what happens in the Star Wars movies is amazing.
And there were some episodes I thought, like, or some actually characters I thought, when you look at the season as a whole and the story that they were telling, there were some characters that you could completely remove from the story. Was it Cyril Khan?
I believe that's his name. Something like that.
The guy that was, trying to capture Andor in the first couple of episodes. Once we get off that initial, when we get past that initial crime that he, when he kills the two security officers and whatever, and he's trying to hunt him down, I kind of just found that character just, oh God, like just, it's just,
and there was no real payoff.
Need to keep coming back to him so many times. I don't think beyond, he was valuable in the first 3 episodes, but sticking with him throughout the entire series, and then seeing him, being nagged by his mum and sitting around having breakfast, and then he went to work for his uncle, and then he's just being a stalker to Dedra Miro. It's like, oh, for God's sake, this guy. It was just, did we need him throughout the whole? I think he could have come in the first 3 episodes, but then he could have just that's his part of the story. We didn't need to keep coming back to him. I think they dropped Saw Gerrera in there for a bit of fan service or whatever to give that link to Rogue One. But did Saw Gerrera actually do anything or bring anything valuable to the actual the plot as a whole?
No, not really. I mean, like you said, he was just like placed there for a second, and even with the character you were talking about, there was no payoff. Like in the final episode, he just runs into the woman that he's been stalking and like sort of saves her when she didn't deserve to be saved, and that's it. Like that was his character arc. So yeah, again, just a wasted character. That Bix character that like Andor was supposed to be saving, what happened with her? I mean, they tried to save her, and obviously it was a trap, but they never made it seem like there was that much of a connection between the two characters. It was like Andor was coming back for the funeral.
Thing, isn't it? Because you want, as an audience member, when you think about it, over the course of these 12 episodes, your connection and strength of bond between Cassian and Bix, when you think about it, should have been, as strong as the connection between, Han and Leia or something, like it should have been. You really should have wanted, and Andor has to go back to save her. This bond is so strong between these two. There was something missing there between their relationship that I just didn't translate to me. And I'm not sure, was that, did you sort of feel the same way, or what
I think her character was in the show to kind of set up Andor's relationship with the main character in Rogue One. Like, I was thinking something bad was going to happen to Bix, and that's why like Andor kind of gets close to Jen Erso. Yeah. So I figured that was just a prelude to that. Even in the end, she was captured. They thought it was going to be a trap, and he came back for his mother's funeral. She was just an afterthought.
I did like the reveal at the end to show all the pieces that they were manufacturing in the prison were part of the Death Star super laser or whatever, which then I guess adds an extra level of motivation, I suppose, to Andor's character, much in the same way that in Rogue One, Galen Erso built in the flaw in the Death Star so that they could take it out. I guess Andor's taken on the mission with Jen Erso in Rogue One to destroy the Death Star, because there's probably an element of him that's like, well, I helped build this bloody thing, I was in the prison, building components for the super laser. So, he kind of felt bad about that, and then obviously that adds extra motivation to his character in terms of wanting to destroy it in Rogue One. So I kind of did like that aspect, but I mean, let's face it, that aspect was revealed pretty quickly. Like, it wasn't like something that was drawn out over the course of the whole season. Yeah, I mean, all the stuff with Genevieve O'Reilly and everything, the sort of the political machinations that were going on with her and trying to, obviously bring in more money, and she had to kind of sort of, I guess, offer her daughter up to the guy who was the I mean, I don't know whether he was like meant to be like a crime lord, or whether he was just like a slightly dodgy businessman or whatever, that she had to introduce her daughter to, I don't know, bring in the funds that they needed to kind of finance the rebellion or whatever. Obviously there was some really powerhouse performances, between her character and Stellan Skarsgård and everything, but I think at the end of the day, as good as all these performances were, I think it just, the whole show, albeit as interesting as it was, it just could have benefited from a tighten up. All the story beats that they hit weren't uninteresting ones. They were interesting story beats. I found. I just found that you would almost get, watching it, you go, okay, this week we've got a boring talking heads episode, and then we have to wait another week. Oh, next week we've got some action, an adventure, and a bit of excitement and everything, So it almost felt like we were bouncing back and forth throughout the season between, talking heads, talking. Oh no,
And staring.
Yeah.
But speaking of, I think you brought up Stellan Skarsgård's character. There's a pretty prominent theory that I've seen online that his character is actually someone who has walked away from the Jedi, similar to Ahsoka Tano. So somebody who was, trained at one point and has now walked away from the Force. Before I give my opinion, what do you think? Like, given his actions,
look,
what do you think?
I can totally see that as being a viable theory. I'm trying to think whether there was anything that hinted towards that.
Well, the one thing that people point to is his shop, because there's a lot of Jedi artifacts.
And he even had the Shankara stones from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Did you notice that?
Yeah, he's got that. He's got the armor, the Starkiller armor from the Force Unleashed games. So yeah, that's a lot of people point to that. But Tony Gilroy, the creator of the series, actually came out and said that he had no idea what was in Stellan Skarsgård's shop. It was all just the production people that like put stuff in there. So like people brought that up to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I have no idea what's it's in there. That's just whatever the production guys got to put in there." I don't know if his character is actually a Jedi, because I think that would kind of undermine the story, right? Because this whole show is based on no Jedi, no Skywalker saga. So if all in all, at the end, like the main guy that we've been following was a Jedi, and has Jedi powers, I think that might undermine, the ethos of the story. But
and I think that would also paint him in a very almost cowardly light, because when you think about it, he's recruited this band of people to do this heist on the Imperial payroll, at Aldani or whatever it was. If he had have just gone along himself and maybe used a few Jedi mind tricks or whatever, they probably could have got in and out and had no loss of life, and it could have been actually achieved far more easily. Except he's this bloke that sort of has an antique shop on Coruscant, and he's sort of recruiting all these people. But it's like, but if he did turn out to be a Jedi, he'd be a pretty, I don't know, it would make him out to be, he's not someone who wants to get his hands dirty. He just palms the job off onto all these other people and gets them killed as a and he was trying to get Andor killed. Like a Jedi won't. If he was a Jedi, would he have tried to get Cassian Andor killed for after they'd done the heist? They were trying to kill him off because he kind of knew too much about their operation or whatever. So they wanted to cut off the loose threads or whatever of the operation, so that they didn't get exposed. But that's kind of a dick move for a Jedi to pull, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think there's anything there, but I know that's one thing that people have brought up a lot. But I like his character the most. Andy Serkis, like I said, I liked his character a lot too. I did not like, his was another one, like people were bringing up like, oh my gosh, his character arc was the greatest of any. Like, it was very formulaic. It was a Nazi sympathizer, any kind of like World War II story that, at the beginning he's, on one team, and then the main character enlightens him, and now he's on the right team. But Andy Serkis also, he's so emotive with his face because of all the work he's done as the Gollum and Caesar from Planet of the Apes. That it's so obvious the other actors don't have that, because you cut to him and he's telling a story with his eyebrows, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And everybody else has just the same emotions. So hopefully we get to see him again. I mean, I think he might just be stuck by himself in that prison waiting for the Empire to come. Because remember, he couldn't swim.
It's not like he turns out to be Snoke or something.
No, that was another thing that people were talking about. That I think Tony Gilroy actually came out and said, like, or maybe it was Andy Serkis that even came out and said, like, no, there's no connection between these two characters. But I really like Andy Serkis. I probably, if we're talking about the three arcs, I actually probably like the prison arc the most, even though I could tell where it was going. So, there's so many different, shades of other, even some of the prison stuff, you could even say had sort of shades of, Squid Game about it or whatever, Yeah, people have brought that up too. Yeah. I've read that in reviews. So, will you be watching the second season of Andor? Like, are you going to be excited for it?
I'll definitely be watching season 2. as I said, I did not enjoy season 1. I thought it had certainly a lot of interesting bits and pieces in it. It just seems to me more. I mean, apart from The Mandalorian, it just seems some of our Star Wars shows more recently on Disney Plus, it just could have been improved with a little bit of tightening up in the editing department. I think obviously Disney is throwing all of their weight behind Star Wars being a TV series at the moment. They've sort of stepped away from making Star Wars into feature films and are exploring the Star Wars universe from a television point of view, which is great because the production value obviously is excellent. There's certainly no qualms at all about the way these shows have looked. I think they've all looked $1 million, and they've certainly stood within the Star Wars universe incredibly well visually. I just think there's obviously, a side to the making of these shows where they're so desperate for people to subscribe to this Disney Plus platform. It's like, okay, well, we have to have this show being 12 episodes so we get as many people subscribing for as many weeks as we can, even if it doesn't necessarily serve the plot and the story we're trying to tell. Yeah. If they focused a little bit more, I think, on saying, okay, well, how much plot do we have in this show? We've got enough plot to fill 8 episodes. We've got enough plot to fill 10 episodes or whatever. Let's not make the show 12 episodes just so that it is stretched out and we get, people subscribing to the platform for longer. Don't do that because it's not servicing the show in its best light. I think it's just, I mean, I get it's a business. It has to make, it has to make money, but there's always that tipping point between, at what point does it kind of, sully the brand or deteriorate the quality of the show you're trying to make by trying to stretch it out and eke it out too much?
I agree. I think when it comes out, and I think it's 2024 when the next season is going to come out, I think I'm going to watch it in batches. I don't think I'm going to watch it every week. I think I'm going to, give it a few weeks and watch it. But one thing that's interesting is that Disney now has a new CEO that he's supposed to be, have machinations in all of their projects, including the new Star Wars project. So we'll see if, how you talked about the filler and the 12 episodes. We'll see if maybe he makes changes and says, no, like we need to cut this down to 10 episodes or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure whether you've seen it or not, Eric, but I watched a fan edit of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which is well worth watching if you haven't watched it yet. It's available online. A fan has taken these 6 episodes of Obi-Wan and edited it down to a 2.5-hour film, which is, of course, what the concept of Obi-Wan originally was conceived as. It was originally conceived as a movie, not as a series. And it is amazing how it improves it. It works so much better as a 2.5-hour film than it does as a 6-part series, because all of the fat and waffle and padding and everything is all trimmed out of it, and it's plot all the way through. And to me, that just kind of shows, wow, like, okay, the content that they're making is really good. It just obviously it just needs a trim. So if you haven't have a look at it yet, I highly recommend.
That's almost half the season cut out, right? If it's 2.5 hours, that means you cut out about half the season. They trimmed the 6 episode series down to like a 2.5 hour film, and it is so much better for it. In fact, I finished watching it, and I thought, I felt I'd been the story was told as it was meant to be told. There wasn't any flat spots or moments that you thought were padded out. It even improved, like it vastly improved the character of Reva. Things made more sense. Yeah, in my opinion, it felt like it restored the original concept that was the film into its kind of what it was originally conceived as, and it almost highlighted to me just how kind of padded out these last couple of Star Wars series have been on the Disney Plus platform, and yeah, I just think we just to either tighten them up, or the plot needs to be of such that it can support extended amount of episodes, I think. So obviously with season 2 of Andor coming in 2024, Eric, what would you like to see
as part of season 2? What do you think is going to improve Andor in a second season?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with you. It should be, if it's going to be 12 episodes, it should be worth 12 episodes. And it's just not right now. So I would like you say, I'd like to tighten up the ship, make it 6 or 8 or 10 episodes, as long as whatever the series needs. I know it's going to lead right into Rogue One. So I don't know if we'll see more characters from that movie, show up next season. So that might be cool. I would like to see more action, like you said, less talking head stuff, less people not trusting each other. Some of the Mon Mothma stuff I found pretty tedious. So I might tighten that up a little bit. This whole storyline with her daughter, like I don't even really get why that had any purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it just had been her doing the sneaking around stuff, trying to raise money for the rebellion, doing kind of backdoor deals and that sort of stuff, I think that would have been interesting. But I think it was the scenes with her and her husband and her daughter sitting around the breakfast table, with the daughter giving her attitude and everything, It's like, do we really need this as well? I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I would just maybe, this is supposed to be a show about a rebellion. So maybe the sense of urgency needs to be kicked up a notch. I don't know if it was on purpose that they wanted to show how everything was so disconnected, but that's definitely how it felt. All these plot lines, while they were interweaving, they seemed very disconnected, being light years, away from each other and stuff like that. So I'd like to see that tighten up too. And, maybe be a more hopeful Star Wars show than it has.
I mean, I think the second season could definitely benefit from the inclusion of K2SO character. I think
that's coming.
Alan Tudyk is so great, bringing him into the show, and obviously the dynamic between that character and Andor was, one of the more entertaining aspects of Rogue One, and added that levity and everything. I think that you were just talking about. So I think seeing him come into it, hopefully early on in the second season, and him being a part of the show throughout. So it's Cassian and K2 or whatever, with that sort of a bit of that sort of Laurel and Hardy kind of esque humor between the two. I get would be a great addition to a second season. And I think also I would love it if they they didn't make an appearance in Rogue One beyond seeing their ship, but I think whether you could bring in one or more of the characters from the animated Rebels series into season 2, because we did see in the background of Rogue One, we did see Chopper, the droid, rolling along in the background of the Yavin 4 Rebel base on Rogue One, and we also saw the Ghost taking part in that mission to take down the shield gate on Scarif. So we know that the Ghost crew were around, in that period prior to Rogue One. So I think seeing K2 in it, and I think if we saw Hera or Zeb or I don't know any of Sabine, any of these characters that we introduced part of the Rebels series, I think if you dropped one or more of those into a season 2, I think that's gonna probably make a lot of fans a lot happier.
Well, some of those characters are appearing in Ahsoka, so maybe they will show up on season 2 as well. So yeah, that would be something cool to look forward to. Maybe just make the show a little bit more fun than it was, because it definitely was a downer. I like you. I don't want to watch that dude eat cereal with his mom anymore. I mean, that was giving me nightmares, man.
Yeah. I mean, when you think that Star Wars at its core has always had a bit of levity in it. Star Wars has never been quite so depressing as it was in Andor, And as I said, there's a lot of moments that sort of felt far more Blade Runner or something than it did, in
very
Star
dystopian,
Wars. Dystopian, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I guess Star Wars never has felt dystopian really until Andor. Maybe that was the point, maybe that was something they were going for, but again, it was just something that didn't rub me the right way. Well, thanks, Nick, once again for being on the channel. We love to have you, and everyone, make sure you check out Nick on his YouTube channel, Sci-Finatics. He covers Star Trek just like we do here, but he also covers other stuff too. So thanks again, Nick. Is there anything you want to plug on your channel or anything?
No, that's all good, Eric. Just check out my channel at the link. Eric will pop the link in the description this video, so you can check that out as well. And always a pleasure talking sci-fi stuff with you, Eric.
Cool. All right, Nick, we'll see you around the bend. And everyone else, thank you once again for joining us here at What Did I Miss?